Hi, guys, and welcome to the English Hour. In today's episode, we'll talk about Murphy's Law. It's an infamous law, and I'll try to summarize it. It basically goes like this. If something can go wrong, it will go wrong. But when I stated this for the first time before recording this episode, Canberk said, well, it doesn't necessarily mean that it will go wrong all the time. So what do you mean by this, Canberk?
Well, hi guys. I think there have been several stages at which I understood this saying. In the beginning, my understanding was very primitive, I have to admit. Maybe years ago I first heard of this, and when I saw it, it said, if it can go wrong, it will go wrong. Then that basically means you have nothing to do. There's nothing you can do about it, about this situation. It will go wrong. And it's kind of disempowering in a sense.
It is.
Like it takes all authority, all power, all agency out of you. Like you can't do anything. It's very deterministic in a sense. But then I have come to realize over time that it actually means it will go wrong if you don't do anything about it. Just know that this is going to be a troublemaker for you. It's almost like a dangling cable. It's an electric cable. There's current going through it, and it's dangling all over the place. And somebody eventually is going to touch that cable, and somebody's going to get really badly hurt. So that's the idea. But if you put it away, if you find a way to rewire it and get rid of that open current, then it's not going to be a problem.
Sure. Well, when was the first time you learned about this rule or law?
I guess at university.
Do you remember the exact time? Because I do, and I'll share it with the audience.
There could be a coincidence over there.
There might be a coincidence. I'm not sure. So the first time I heard about this law was when I was taking the Introduction to Language and Linguistics class by Martin Pertrager. Yeah, at Boğaziçi. I think it was my first semester, and I was really enjoying the class, and I think something went wrong in the classroom, and he was like, okay, Murphy's Law, if something can go wrong, it will go wrong. Oh, yeah. And I was like, interesting. So there's a law for this. Well, it's not like a physics law. I mean, when we call that a law, it doesn't mean that it's related to the theory of gravity or something like that. It's like a pseudo law. Yeah, kind of. But it relates to a lot of things that we experience because, you have an important meeting and you set an alarm for the early hours of the morning, but then when you wake up, you realize that, it's already past the meeting and you're in panic. Or you have an important presentation and then your computer got stuck. Down, it breaks down. It's stuck or something, and you're like, and if you have not made any backups or additional printouts or anything like that, then you're in serious trouble.
That's a nightmare.
Yeah, and it's the cases like this, or you don't have a spare tire and you're traveling, and then
it's like a long distance travel.
Yeah, it's a long distance travel, and
you're
then
off the beaten track.
There's
no city
there's
center around.
No one around you, and then you have a flat tire, and you're in panic.
Yeah.
And as Canberk mentioned, in many cases, if you have taken the necessary measures or precautions, you can generally avoid some of the major drawbacks of this law. So, well, sure, if something can go wrong, it might go wrong. Yeah. It does not have to go wrong all the time. So, for example, if the road is slippery, I might fall down, I might slip on the road and I might fall down, or I might try to maybe walk to the side of the road or hold the rails and try to move like that. And I might try to secure myself. Mm-hmm. So there are always some precautions or measures that we can take, and it greatly reduces the impact of the negative outcomes that we might encounter.
Definitely. Yeah. So I think that's the reason why Murphy said it in the first place, right? I mean, the idea is when people first hear this saying or this what do you call it? An aphorism?
An aphorism.
Yeah. When people first hear it, it has a negative tone to it. It's like when people think about it, like, oh, it can't go. This person's very pessimistic about life.
Yeah.
Something like that. That's the first reaction.
I think he is erring on the side of caution.
I totally agree. And I think there's a reason for that.
Sure.
I think the reason why he wants to emphasize that side of things, like that maybe more pessimistic side of things, more negative side of things, is because he's trying to make you take precautions.
Sure.
Like
because, if you're afraid that something will go wrong, because he says it's going to go wrong, then you have to make sure that you have a backup plan before that important presentation.
Exactly. Just err on the caution of...
On the side of caution.
On the side of caution. That's the idea.
Yeah.
And I think it really encapsulates that idea, in its entirety. And even though at first sight, it might not be love at first sight, it can still be a very useful tool in your arsenal in your skill set of like life management.
Sure. I mean, if it leads you to be extra prepared, if it leads you to create emergency plans or contingency plans, as they might call it, then it's good for you because... Yeah. If you don't have that habit, if you think that things will go smoothly, you'll be surprised to find that they don't go smoothly.
Yeah, definitely.
And in fact, the idea for this episode came a couple weeks ago after one of the holidays, religious holidays here in Turkey. And we had some book orders over the holiday. And the next day, we packed all of them. We printed the invoices and everything. We got them ready, and we called the shipment company and confirmed that they would pick them up and send them to our readers. Everything was great. Everything was set up. And the next day we learned that the shipment company, although they confirmed that they would pick them up and send them, they did not do that. And we were in trouble because we promised our students that their books would be dispatched as soon as possible. Mm-hmm. And I was like, okay, oh good God. Yeah. It was very sad. I think we did what we could because we confirmed with them, and at that point I thought they'd do what they promised they would. Yeah. But they didn't, and it was sad. And a couple things like that happened during that week, and I was like, okay, this is obviously more Murphy's Law in practice. In practice. But again, we were trying to do our part, but there are times when even when you do your part, others might not, and that in the grand scheme of things can really backfire.
Yeah. It's almost like traffic, right? You can drive in the best manner possible, but the person next to you, the driver next to you, can make such a huge blunder that both your life and their life are going to be in danger. And It happens all the time. And actually, this real life example, could be another way we can see Murphy's Law. Because even when you do everything within your power, to make sure that things go smoothly, they might not. And also, the versatility about this saying is that it also summarizes, it also encapsulates this aspect of things. Even if you take precautions, sometimes things might still go wrong. And also, in some cases, you don't really have a lot of redundancy.
Sure.
In some cases you can, and in other cases you just don't. And that's the reality of life. We don't have a lot of redundancies for having to have a hip surgery or falling down and completely fracturing your spine or something. God forbid, things happen, but we don't have a backup spine. We can't do anything about it. And also, shipment is not something that you have a backup for. This is a huge company, and they do their job well, and they have built consistency and reliability over the years, and you trust them, but they fail sometimes.
Sure. And the thing is, when I think about the Murphy's Law and the examples that I encounter in my life, I think I've found another aspect, another perspective to interpret Murphy's Law. Murphy's Law can also be used to console other people or console yourself because, well, you do everything within your power to take measures and to prevent a negative outcome. But again, still, something bad happens. And then you might take a deterministic view and say, well, I did whatever I could. And again, in the end, we had a negative outcome. But, it's Murphy's Law. If something can go wrong, it will go wrong. But then this makes me wonder, this makes me question, because when people think about negative things, it might bring about negative things. Because there was this notion of the secrets, like how you interact with your environment and with the universe impacts the reactions that you'll get. If you have a positive attitude, and I must say I agree with it, if you have a positive attitude, you will attract positive people, you'll attract positive outcomes to your life. But if you have a negative attitude, a negative outlook, you will kind of attract negative outcomes, negative people to your life. So
that's a good aspect.
Yeah, well, in that case, I'm not sure if I should really hold on to Murphy's Law. Like, it's good to know things might go wrong because I don't want to use it to console myself.
Yeah.
I mean, there might be such an approach to it, but personally, I would not like to use Murphy's Law to console myself, to sort of feel relieved. I'd rather do something else.
I see.
Okay, I would like to know that things might go wrong, and I'd like to take the precautions, the measures I can take to avoid such an outcome. But in the end, I would want to be more on the positive side.
Yeah. Actually, a lot of cultures have certain sayings and principles that reflect some of the truth that is contained in the Murphy's Law. I think the Japanese have a saying, shikata ga nai, I guess, that's the phrase. And it means it cannot be helped. That basically means there's nothing you can do about a certain situation. And I think attitude is really important. That's the idea. You can have a deterministic view of something. You can think that action is not the right strategy at this point in time, and you can still have a positive attitude, because that's the battle versus war type of situation. In that particular case, you can actually say, and this is a very subjective thing, but I don't know if you would agree, you can still see that there's nothing to do at that particular time and space. There could be a lot of it's a very squeezed situation, but you can still be strategic about it. You can still have a positive attitude about it, and you can still glean a lesson from there and apply it to something that makes your life much better.
I think you should be a realistic optimist.
Definitely.
You should be an optimist, but you should have your feet on the ground. You should not be far from the truth or the current reality. You should be fully aware of the possible handicaps, possible obstacles, problems that you might encounter, but you should also have a positive attitude towards your life, towards your plans, and act accordingly. So I'm not sure if there exists such a word, but I would say I would want to be, or I would be defined as a realistic optimist.
Yeah, I think that makes a lot of sense. Realistic optimism is something that empowers you. First of all, it's not disempowering in the sense that, okay, I can't do anything about it, and then having a negative attitude. That's not what we want to do. And at the same time, just seeing the realities of life, and sometimes there are limits.
Sure.
This is the life on Earth. That's it's finite. A lot of things are finite.
Yeah, in Turkish we have this saying, tevekkül, right?
Tevekkül, yeah.
So you do what you can, and the rest is up to God. But at least at a personal level, you know that you've done what you should have.
Yeah.
And that is soothing.
It is.
It is soothing.
And also, if you first of all, when you enter that context, and I think it's a religious cultural religio-cultural context,
Sure.
then there are certain other parameters that go with it as well. You realize, first of all, that you are not judged, or your success is not based on the experiences, the circumstances that you encounter, but your response to them. And
Sure.
when you realize that actually even inaction is action.
Sure, it is.
Even attitude is action. Like patience, for example, is defined in this religio-cultural context as having the mental fortitude to simply withstand in the moment. In the moment, meaning at the time of impact. Once the disaster hits, once your head is like boiling, once you're frustrated, when you can hold on, when you can withstand and tolerate the situation there, that's real patience. So actually, there's nothing to do about a certain situation, and that's the reality, but you're patient. You're exercising patience. That's action.
Matters.
Yeah, it makes a lot of sense.
And it's very difficult. Like patience can be seen as a form of inaction, but it takes an enormous amount of effort to retain that inaction.
Yeah.
Because like when you're boiling inside, when you want to do something bad,
Yeah.
it's really difficult
It is.
to contain that feeling, that power.
Yeah. So basically, Murphy's Law tells you that the world is real. It happened. Things happen. That's the idea.
And you should take precautions.
Yeah, actually, you can do whatever you want with the world, right? It kind of gives you that freedom. It doesn't necessarily tells you what you should be doing, but if you interpret it as such, I think it would be very helpful and empowering for you.
Well, guys, this is basically our take on Murphy's Law, and we would love to read and hear your stories and experiences with this law or your take on this issue. So feel free to share your comments and your ideas or examples in the comments section. And that's it for now. And
Bye-bye.
I'll see you in the next episode.
Bye.
Bye.